pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. On this episode of Attitude, my guest and I are going to talk about the American flag. My guest is Mike Whalen, Hopkinton resident and member of the American Legion. Mike will be giving us information on the proper use and handling of our beloved national symbol, and maybe some history too. I'm Mary Arnott, your host and producer of Attitude. Attitude is more than just the name of the show. It's a statement that the attitude in life determines action and whether we are successful or not. This was very evident in the attitude and the actions and the determination of the people of our original 13 colonies as they won their independence against the British in the 1700s. As my guest Mike Whalen and I talk about the American flag, I hope you will have a renewed sense of patriotism, pride, and appreciation for the most recognized symbol of our country and across the world. So call the kids in to watch the show with you and enjoy it. Hi Mike, thank you for coming and being my guest today.
My pleasure, Mary.
Glad to have you here.
Okay.
So I normally give a little biography in my opening, but since I didn't have that in there, I was wondering if you'd tell us a little bit about yourself and the American Legion.
Sure thing. I'm a lifetime resident of Hopkinton, a Marine Corps veteran, and presently I hold the office of Post Adjutant in our local American Legion post. I also belong to the Metro West Marine Corps League, similar organization, but it's strictly for Marines, whereas the Legion has members from all branches of the service.
And what are some of the little bit of specifics of the American Legion, what they do?
Well, it's a support group for veterans. Over the years, it has changed a little bit. I think it's mainly made up of older veterans right now. And I think that will probably stay like that for a while, as younger veterans don't really seem interested in joining the Legion for various reasons. I'm not sure. If we knew what the reason was, we'd fix it. But I'm here today anyway to talk about the American flag. And I don't think we can start it off without mentioning Betsy Ross. A legend has it that George Washington came to her. She must have been in the business, upholstery business or curtain business or something. And so George came to her and said, "I need a flag for my army." And she came up with, or George and her came up with, what is known as the original.
Yeah, if you hold that up just for a second, they'll get it on camera for us. Yeah.
All right, with the 13 stars and 13 stripes. Each, at the time, it was 13 colonies, and that's how they come up with that number. The plan was each time they added a new state, well, they were going to add a new star and a new stripe. And it probably started off all right with 13, 14, 15 stripes, but then someone said, "Hey, wait a minute, maybe we better go back to just 13 stripes and we'll just add a star every time there's a state." And it's been a while since we've added a star. I can remember when Hawaii and Alaska were added. I think it was 1959 or so, or 60, and everybody had to trade in their 48 stars for a 50-star flag, which is what we have today.
You're right. I think it's been 52 years since the current flag that we know and love has been our flag. Yeah.
I actually brought I have a flag that's folded, and this is a 48-star flag. It was from a relative who was a veteran, which I've kept at my house, and I'm sure a lot of people have these folded flags at their house when they receive, when a family member or loved one passes away. This is the flag that is draped on the casket and is handed to the surviving members of the family. Each branch of service has their own little speech that goes along with the presentation, but it basically says, on behalf of the President of the United States and a grateful nation, please accept this flag as a symbol of your loved one's service to your country.
And I understand there's a very specific way it has to be folded when it's presented. Yeah.
Correct. We've all been to funerals, and we've seen the two soldiers or sailors or Marines, whatever, take great care to fold the flag. There is only one way to do it, and the only way, if you do it right, it ends up just like this. And so they practice it to make sure it comes out right, and just folds it in and it tucks in, and then you can present it in this fashion.
Yes, my family has one from my father, who was in the Army, and my older brother, who has since also passed away, and he was in the Air Force, so they're family treasures. Now, when I was searching around town for someone to do a show with me on the American flag, your name came up several times as a member of the American Legion and somewhat of an expert on the proper use and handling and displaying.
Right. Well, I don't know if I'm an expert, but I think we all are familiar with flag etiquette. I think respect is the word that comes to mind. You know, not to use it in a way that, maybe offends somebody as a article of clothing or draped on something inappropriate. The flag, traditionally, you raise it in the morning and take it down at night, unless you want to keep it lit. So, like I say, since we invented electricity, that's been the way. If you want to put a light on it, you can keep it up all night. Also, foul weather. It's supposed to come down in foul weather, hurricane or something like that. You would take it down, and then occasionally there's a call for to fly it at half staff, which I believe any person of authority can order that, whether it's the president or the governor of a state. And sometimes it's appropriate, sometimes they don't always agree with the reasoning. But that's everybody's prerogative. If they think it's time to half-mast, then they can do it if they have the authority. We do lower it every Memorial Day in the morning to half, all the flags around town. And then after we have our ceremony, it ends at noontime, we run them back up to the top. Otherwise, they would fly at the top all year round.
Now, at the time we're taping and recording this show is right around Flag Day.
Right.
And of course, I was doing a little background and reviewing my history lessons from when I was a kid about Flag Day. June 14th, 1777, the Act of Continental Congress at the time said there will be a flag with the stars and the stripes. But there's something else that is sometimes done on Flag Day, too, by the American Legion in terms of disposing of the flag.
Right. Over the course of the year, we accumulate well over 1,000 used flags that have been weathered or ripped or whatever.
Beyond repair.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Most of them come from the cemeteries, and then another substantial amount comes from the public buildings around town. And traditionally, the way to dispose of them is to burn them. You could have a large ceremony or a small ceremony, doesn't matter. The main thing is we don't want to see flags sticking out of a trash can or something like that.
Yeah.
So burning kind of gets rid of all the residue, and all we have left is ashes. And it seems like the right way to destroy a flag.
Well, hopefully our audience will either have already known that, or now they know and will never see in town in Hopkinton.
Yeah, I don't think that's really been a problem in this town ever. People have been pretty good about looking. They'll hold on to a flag forever until they find the right place to drop it off. So we're good about that. You mentioned earlier, when we were talking earlier, you said you're looking for a flag yourself. And you want to make sure that if you bought a flag, it was made in the USA
Yeah.
and not
yeah.
in China. So, but they're out there. So,
Well, yeah, a lot of times you just go into the stores and you see them displayed and you go up and you buy one, and if you don't stop to check,
Right.
you know, there are so many that
Yeah.
are made in China or another
it does
country,
seem
but
a little hypocritical to do that, but I think most people just do it by mistake.
yeah, you just,
Right.
but,
Now, getting back to flag etiquette, I just want to mention, however, that the Supreme Court did rule back some years ago that the citizens have a right to desecrate a flag if they choose to. Unfortunately, most people don't agree with that decision, but it really isn't against the law. These rules about flags are just rules. They're not really law. So unless a constitutional amendment is passed, which several groups are working on, it remains really a person's option to do with it as he or she pleases, unfortunately.
yeah, well, we'll hope most people will be more reasonable about things like that. and
Right.
not-
It's usually somebody protesting something
Yeah.
who's unhappy
Yeah.
with life or the government or
Yeah.
something like that, and this is the way they show their displeasure.
Well, when you mentioned purchasing a flag too, I know one that I had gotten had this little brochure in it that actually talked about the proper etiquette, you know, how to display it, when to display it. If you have something else, you know, you never let the American flag be lower than,
Right.
you know, it's always in a prominent position.
Which
so-
is the small problem that I had at the gazebo, the new gazebo uptown. When in the old gazebo, I actually had the same situation. As you know, the gazebo is round, and we like to keep it with flags, different kinds of flags, whether it's POW or Navy or United States Marines. Became a problem because the American flag has to always be on the right. So no matter where I put the American flag on the gazebo, it was always in the wrong place because it was in a circle. It could never be displayed properly.
Oh, okay.
All right, so that's when it took upon, the Legion took upon, the job of finding a separate flagpole, which is up there right now. It has been for a couple of years, apart from the gazebo, so we can fly that flag there, and it can't be out of place. Because
Did we get it right in the studio? If you're facing the cameras this way, the flag's on the right, so we got it.
Flag has to be on the right.
We got it right.
Flag
then.
on the right.
Okay.
Got it right.
I didn't want to have to stop the show and move it real quickly and make sure that
No.
we can.
As a matter of fact, the flag that's flying is a gift from Ralph Edwards' son-in-law, who brought the flag back from Afghanistan a couple of years ago. And Ralph and his family were present when I ran that flag up there.
I know Ralph well. He attends church, same place I go. And speaking of bringing flag back, this one too we also have here on display with a little plaque that was given to St. Paul's and Grace United Churches, was from a U.S. Army troop who was flying a mission, and they had this particular flag on the side of their helicopter. And when they finished the mission, they folded it up and they sent it to us. So we're very honored to have that one with us as well.
Yeah, it's nice to have a special flag, even though they all look the same.
Yeah.
It is nice to have one that has special meaning in your possession.
And I'll mention to the audience, the one that you showed that was the replica of the Betsy Ross flag with the 13 stars in the circle. Davison Welsh loaned that to me so that I could have it on the show today and we could show it. Because I told him we were doing one of the American flags.
Well, I'm
so,
sure
yeah.
Dave's watching.
Or will be when it's
Maybe he
shown.
wasn't watching, yeah. Another thing I brought along, which is it's just a smaller version of it's called the service flag. I have quite a few of these in stock in my Legion closet. This was very popular in World War II. And members, family who had members overseas during that war would fly these in their window, hang them in their window, One star would indicate, one son or daughter, and 2 and 3, whatever.
Okay.
And you would be known as a Blue Star family, or in a Blue Star mother in that case. And these are quite popular back then. And if anybody in town does have a son or daughter serving currently, I'd be glad to contact me. I'd be glad to hook them up with one of these, and they can proudly display it in their window. And I'm sure they have American flag hanging in their
Yeah, I was
yard
going to
anyway.
say maybe with the flag, and then have that for
Right.
their son or daughter who's serving in the military.
Absolutely, yeah.
That's wonderful.
It is. Well, I say it used to be well known, not so much now. But if anybody wants one, I have them.
And you were also telling me, though, about the Gold Star mothers, unfortunately.
Right. Yeah. As I said, this has a Blue Star, and if tragedy struck and you lost somebody, then you would hang a Gold Star in your window, and that's what we do in America here.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
Well, thank you for sharing that with us. And like you said, if there's anybody in Hopkinton that has a son or daughter serving,
Absolutely.
they feel free to contact you, and you have some of those if they'd like to have one in their window.
Right. I'm
Yeah.
glad to.
I have to tell you, though, when you were telling us the story about Betsy Ross and the design of the flag, I did a little cheating, and I looked out on the website on some things. And there's actually, I think it's Wikipedia or one of the websites that talks about the history of the flag. And they talk about a gentleman named Francis Hopkinson, not Hopkinton, close though, Hopkinson, who claims that he designed, he had the first design of the American flag back in 1776 and was trying to get Congress, the Continental Congress at the time, to adopt it and give him credit for it. He was a signer, I think they said, of the Declaration of Independence or something. So there's a little controversy there if Betsy really was the first one. I don't know what. So for any viewers who are interested and go out and look at the history of the American flag, they'll find that, look up Francis Hopkinson and see what you think about who really did it. I don't know.
Well, he might have. Maybe he did design it and Betsy
Yeah.
sold it. I mean, maybe that was her claim.
Yeah, well, her design had the circle of the stars.
Right.
His had 13 stars.
Oh, is that what it was? Different?
But they were in rows.
Oh.
And there was something about that when they did the act of the Continental Congress to adopt the Stars and Stripes back on Flag Day, June 14, 1777, they said, well, we didn't really specify what the stars would look like, and some other. So there was some controversy over that back then.
I did read once where originally the stars were 6-pointed, and
Oh, now that I didn't know. I thought
Yes.
they were always 5-pointed.
they had toyed around with the idea of a 6-pointed flag, star, and then somebody showed them that 5 was the way to go. Minor detail, but something.
Another interesting thing I read, there's a custom, or maybe some could say it's more than a custom, but that the American flag is never dipped to any person or country.
Oh,
And
yes. When displayed, there was
displayed,
those
yeah.
rules. We like to keep our flag flying the highest, and it does not dip to anyone or any other country. In parades, you'll see that. Certain times flags will dip, but the American flag will stay straight up.
Well, the background that I read was back in 1908. I guess the Olympics were back in London back then too, and I guess they're going to be in London again this summer.
That's
But in 2012, that the countries were all asked to dip their flags to King Edward. I don't know if it was the 7th or whoever it was back then, but the team leader for the American team refused to dip the flag and said the flag never dips to any royalty or king or any other country.
Well, especially them.
Yeah, and didn't do it. Yeah.
Well, that's a good story.
I thought that was kind of a good, interesting
Yeah.
historical perspective on it, but yeah.
Oh.
So it gets interesting when you go back and hear and read some of these things that I'd forgotten since my history days in school and stuff. But the other thing is the days to display the flag. I mean, we should display it every day, but typically people think of Flag Day, 4th of July, and there's a number of holidays that.
If you notice, though, I mean, you go around town, the DPW hangs up our flags on Main Street and in Woodville on those very days. whether it's July 4th or Memorial Day, or Flag Day, they're up right now. So they're really good about that, putting them up and taking them down. They don't fly me around, those flags on the poles.
Yeah, they'd probably get, in our weather, they would get too worn
Right.
out
Yeah,
too
they would have to
quickly.
buy
and
new ones every
yeah, they'd
6
have to buy
months.
new ones every, every
Right.
6 months.
But
Yeah, that,
no, they make an effort, and it shows. You know, they put them up and take them down whenever it's appropriate. And yes, and there's quite a few of them on every pole. You know, in the center of town, in Woodville.
now, there's something I remember, and I'm hoping I'm remembering it correctly. I thought I had read that for the U.S. Navy, when you talked about the American flag always being higher than any other flag, that I thought it said if the chaplain of the Navy is performing a service or ceremony, the church flag can actually be a little higher than the American flag. Does that sound familiar?
I heard that.
and
Now that
that's
you
the
say
only
that,
time
now that you
that
say that, I think I saw the exception to the rule.
the only one
and
exception to
there
the
was
rule.
something about that.
Yeah.
It must have some historical significance for whatever reason. But yeah, another little story.
Well, the internet and also books at the library, you can find
Right.
all sorts of things.
Right.
Yeah. We'll be coming up shortly to the end of our time here. Is there any other stories or particular things about the carrying and handling of and displaying the American flag you'd like to share with us? Or?
Well, I mean, just get back to Memorial Day. The Legion purchased flag holders at the cemeteries a few years back because when we were placing flags at the headstones of the veterans, you stick the stick in the ground, and the flag would be on the ground.
Oh, yeah, and
Just-
you can't do that.
And it seemed like, wow, we got to be a better way. So, through donations and some money we had, we bought all those flag holders throughout the cemeteries in town here, and now it looks better anyway. But it keeps the flags off the ground, and then plus it's easier to find veterans' graves if there's a marker already there. In years past, it took a lot longer to flag these cemeteries because sometimes flags would get misplaced, and then the next year there was no flag there, so it didn't get put again, so it got missed. But we've got a pretty good system now, thanks to the Girl Scouts, Boy Scouts, Cub Scouts, I'm going to forget somebody, but Brownies. But
that help out.
they all help out. It's a little helter-skelter sometimes because they have a lot of energy, and they almost race to the stones to try and get their flag in before someone else does. But we get it done, and I like it because it involves the youth of the town, and it's just going to give them a little memory. That's all.
Now, one other thing I want to make sure we plug, because you and I talked about this before we actually started recording the show, and that is we need to find a place in town where we can put a proper container so that people, if they have flags they want to make sure are properly disposed of in the American Legion, for them to take care of it, we want this displayed somewhere in town so people can come and put their flags in. And you suggested an old mailbox of some sort, or?
Right. I've seen that used in other towns, and it looks nice. You paint it up and make sure that people know it's not for mail.
Right. We can put a big sign on
Right.
it, a nicely done sign.
Flags
yeah.
only.
Flags only to
right.
be disposed of
But,
by American
that
Legion.
that would be a nice addition to this town, to have something like that, and yeah. So we're all for that.
All right, so we'll let our viewing audience know, our town selectmen and others who may be interested, that let's find a proper place for such a container and make sure people know. Don't throw your flags in the trash. Don't discard them in an old closet or cupboard or
Right.
whatever. Let's get something up where people can go. It's centrally located, or in an area that's convenient, and people can go at any time during the year then and put their flag in that, and the American Legion will make sure that, now, is that something you specifically do in
Yes.
behalf of the group?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes,
So
that's
you're the
right.
one, as you said, you had a bunch of flags at home that
I
you're
had
going
line
to
flags
take
there
care of,
and-
and,
Light a match.
okay. So
they
we could
burn.
look at maybe Town Hall or Senior Center or one of the churches or someplace where it would be conveniently located, and we could do that.
Yeah, I like that a lot.
Okay, thank you very much. I got to wrap up right now. Thank you to Mike for being my guest today on Attitude. It was an honor to talk with him about Old Glory. Thank you to our viewing audience. I hope you will be cherishing your American flag more than ever before when you properly display it. If you do not have a flag, check the internet for a place that sells them that are made in America. There is also a wealth of information on your country's living symbol in history books and in websites. You can go to the town library or browse for references. Thank you again to HCAM's Jim Cousins and Mike Terosian for making this show possible. And thank you, of course, to the volunteers today who are assisting with the program. Denise, and I'm going to mispronounce her name as I always do, and Taki and Karen Davis, who are helping with teleprompter and cameras today. Until next time, I'm Mary Arnott, signing out with Attitude. Hi, Mom.